Last night, I heard something breathing under my backyard deck, but when I checked, there was nothing there except fresh claw marks on the wood. Growing up, my backyard stretched into a thick patch of woods. During the day, it was just trees and dirt, but at night, it became something else entirely. My parents always warned me never to go too far in, especially after dark. They claimed the woods had a way of making people disappear. I never believed the stories, until one summer night changed everything. It was a humid evening, the kind where the air clung to your skin. I was sitting on the back porch, scrolling through my phone, when I heard it, whispering. It was faint, almost lost in the rustling of the trees. At first I thought it was my imagination, but then I heard it again. Clearer this time, closer. The voice was soft, almost familiar, like someone I knew was calling me. It was coming from the woods. My chest tightened. Every instinct told me to go inside, to lock the doors and forget about it. But curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the damp grass, moving toward the trees. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. No crickets, no wind, just silence. Then suddenly my flashlight flickered. The beam caught something ahead, a figure half hidden behind a tree. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. The figure shifted slightly, and that's when I saw it. Its eyes, black, hollow, endless. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat, but before I could turn and run, I heard it again. A whisper, right behind me. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing, just trees and shadows. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to my house, but when I slammed the door shut, I realized something horrifying. My flashlight was missing. I must have dropped it in the woods. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just a dream, a trick of the night. But when I stepped onto the porch, my stomach dropped. Sitting on the wooden steps was my flashlight, and beside it, a single muddy footprint, not mine and not human. My parents always said our backyard deck needed fixing. The wooden planks were old, some slightly warped, and underneath was a dark, hollow space just tall enough for raccoons or stray cats to hide. But last summer, I realized something else was living under there. And it wasn't an animal. It started with noises. At first, it was just faint scratching, like something was shifting around under the deck at night. I assumed it was a raccoon. Then came the breathing, deep, slow, heavy breaths. The kind that sent a shiver down your spine because you just know they don't belong to anything you can explain. One night, around 2 a.m., I was lying in bed when I heard it again. Only this time, it was closer. The sound was coming directly beneath my bedroom window, which overlooked the backyard deck. I sat up, heart pounding. Then, a long, slow exhale. The breath fogged up my window from the outside. I scrambled out of bed, my body frozen between fear and disbelief. The deck was at least 5 feet below my window. Nothing should be able to breathe against the glass from that height. Summoning whatever courage I had left, I inched toward the window and pulled back the curtain. Nothing, just the empty backyard bathed in moonlight. But then I saw it, a shape, a tall, distorted figure crouching under the deck. The way it moved wasn't natural. It stretched, unfolded itself, its limbs too long, its neck tilting at an unnatural angle as it looked up at me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My breath hitched in my throat as the figure crawled back into the darkness beneath the deck, disappearing completely. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare, maybe a shadow, maybe my mind playing tricks. But when I stepped outside, something made my stomach drop. The wooden planks of the deck had deep claw marks, long and jagged, like something had been trying to pull itself out or drag something in. I never heard the breathing again after that night, but I never walked barefoot on that deck again either, because sometimes when the wind is just right, I still hear it, the sound of something exhaling, waiting, watching. Our backyard had an old shed that my dad used for storage. Rusted tools, broken chairs, things that had no real use anymore. It had always creeped me out. The wood was rotting, the lock barely held the door shut, and at night it seemed darker than it should have been, as if the inside swallowed light. My parents swore no one ever went in there, but sometimes at night I'd hear scraping sounds coming from inside. I told myself it was just the wind, until the night I saw him. It was late, probably around midnight. I was in my room, the curtain slightly open, when I noticed something outside. The shed door was open. My stomach dropped. We always kept it locked. Always. I leaned in closer, trying to see if my dad had forgotten to shut it, but then something moved. A tall figure, standing just inside the shed. At first I thought it was a shadow, but then I saw eyes. Pale, milky white eyes staring directly at me. I froze. The figure tilted its head, slow, unnatural, like it wasn't used to moving like a person, and then it took a step forward. My chest tightened. My first instinct was to look away, pretend I hadn't seen it, but I couldn't move. It stepped closer, out of the shed. That's when I realized something was wrong. The way it moved, it was like it was dragging itself forward, its limbs stiff, its body slightly hunched, and its skin, it didn't look right. It was stretched too tight, almost like it didn't belong to it. I scrambled away from the window, my heart pounding. I wanted to scream for my parents, but I was too scared to make a sound. Then, a knock. Not at my front door, not at the back door, at my window. I turned my head, terrified, and there it was, standing outside my bedroom window. The glass should have been a barrier, but I swear, I heard it whisper my name. I bolted out of my room, screaming for my dad. By the time he ran outside, the shed door was closed again, locked, like nothing had ever happened. But the next morning, we found something that made my blood run cold. The lock was broken from the inside, and footprints led from the shed, straight to my window.